Louise Brooks is one of the most famous stars of the silent era, known specifically for saying goodbye to Hollywood and traveling to Europe, where she made two films that are considered by many to be some of the greatest silent films of all time. Returning to America in 1930, she found it difficult to find work but did manage to star in a few talkies. While I don't have any new information to add about her retirement from the screen or her subsequent life, it is my hope that this video will serve more as a tribute to one of the greatest and most uniquely talented movie stars in history. Before I begin, I must credit Louise herself for her insightful book of autobiographical essays, Lulu in Hollywood, that proved to be an invaluable primary source for this video. Join me as I cover the career of the brilliant Louise Brooks. Louise was born in 1906 in Cherryvale, Kansas, to attorney L.P. Brooks and his pianist wife, Myra Brooks, who was also a woman suffragist and a touring lecturer. From an early age, Louise studied dance with the hopes of being a professional dancer, which she did early on as a child prodigy, dancing at local clubs and fairs. It was during her early years as a dancer that Louise first got her signature bob haircut, which she credits to her mother. One of Louise's childhood friends in Cherryville was none other than Vivian Vance, later star of I Love Lucy. Despite these early successes in her childhood, Louise's life was also filled with horror. When she was 9, a man in her neighborhood sexually assaulted her, a horribly traumatic event that would go on to psychologically affect Louise for years to come. In 1919, the Brooks family relocated to Wichita, where Louise continued to find work as a young ballet dancer. In November 1921, her life changed forever when she saw a touring production in Wichita of a new kind of dance, modern, performed by the Denishawn dancers, headed by modern dance developers Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn, and featuring Martha Graham. Myra Brooks took Louise to meet Shawn and Graham backstage, and soon she convinced her husband to allow Louise to travel to New York by herself at just the age of 16 to study modern dance with these greats in the summer of 1922. Louise soon was made a member of the Denishawn company and joined their 22-23 and 23-24 tours. She was even a featured soloist with Ted Shawn in one of his famous dances. But her success was short-lived as Ruth St. Denis fired her in 1924. However, due to her friendship with actress Barbara Bennett, sister of actresses Constance and Joan, Louise quickly found herself dancing on Broadway to the music of George Gershwin in successful George White Scandals. Following that up, she danced in the musical Louis XIV and was promoted to being a specialty dancer in the famous Ziegfeld Follies in 1925, in which she performed alongside W.C. Fields, Will Rogers, and Lena Basquette. It was in this production that Louise first got noticed by Paramount producer Walter Wanger, and soon Louise would be leaving Broadway for the movies, initially at Paramount's Astoria Studios in Queens. Louise would often film during the day before returning to the Follies at night while she was still on the stage. She made her film debut in 1925 as a gangster's moll in one memorable scene in The Street of Forgotten Men. She followed this up with a small role in The American Venus before appearing in her breakthrough role as the vampy younger sister to star Evelyn Brent in Love 'Em and Leave 'Em in 1926. The film, a major hit, got Louise excellent notices, with most critics saying that she stole the film from Brent and Lawrence Gray. Louise made two other important films in 1926. It's the Old Army Game reteamed her with her Broadway friend and co-star W.C. Fields and saw her give a raw, emotional performance in an otherwise comedic picture. The Show-Off saw Louise as the good girl next door to a family that is victim to the antics of a braggart played by Ford Sterling. It is Louise's character, Clara, who puts the silly man in his place multiple times. She also got great notices for the comedic side of her performance, in which she pantomimed a car chase. In 1927, Louise relocated to Paramount's Hollywood studios in Los Angeles, where she co-starred in Evening Clothes, Rolled Stockings, The City Gone Wild, and Now We're in the Air. However, it was 1928 that marked a turning point in Louise's career in Hollywood. First, she was loaned to Fox to star in Howard Hawks' A Girl on Every Port, in which she played the temptress that comes between friends, played by Victor McLaglen and Robert Armstrong. In a truly chilling scene, she tries to seduce Armstrong's character with her gaze alone. The film was a hit and got Louise great notices again. Also in 1928, Louise starred in her biggest role to date at Paramount, Beggars of Life, as a young woman that kills her wretched adopted father in self-defense and must flee for her life with a fellow runaway vagabond played by Richard Arlen. Together, they must jump trains and join forces with several other hobos, including Wallace Beery. The production shoot was full of on- and off-screen drama, which I'm not going to mention here, but I do recommend reading about in Louise's book. Nevertheless, the film got Louise the best reviews of her career and was another box office hit. Paramount immediately pushed her into filming the silent film The Canary Murder Case later in 1928, in which she played the title character, a high-flying showgirl known as the Canary that winds up murdered. It was a step down for Louise after her critically acclaimed work in Beggars of Life. Furthermore, to make matters worse, Paramount refused to offer her a raise, still vastly underpaying her for her exquisite work. Coincidentally, Canary wrapped at the same time her contract was up for renewal. Refusing to give in to Paramount manager B.B. Schulberg's demands that she renew her contract at the same low pay, Louise refused, walked away, but ended up walking into the greatest opportunity of her career. Legend has it that when Louise was literally walking out of Schulberg's office at Paramount, she was handed a letter from Austrian director G.W. Pabst, who saw Louise and a girl in every port and wanted to cast her on the spot to play Lulu in his silent adaptation of Frank Wedekind's German play Pandora's Box. Much to the chagrin of second choice Marlene Dietrich, who was apparently sitting in Pabst's office, Louise cabled him back and accepted the part, even though she did not speak German, knew nothing of his work, and had never even read the play. So Louise was off to Germany to star in Pandora's Box, a silent masterpiece that would solidify her place in film history as one of the silent screen's greatest actresses. The film tells the story of Lulu, a wild and carefree dancer who is a mistress and later wife to a wealthy man, later accidentally kills him, flees the country with his son, and ends up becoming a prostitute on the streets of London where she encounters Jack the Ripper. Talk about a character arc. While Louise's portrayal of Lulu is now considered to be one of the greatest performances in film history, it was met with bewilderment by the German movie-viewing public in 1929. Used to melodramatic, exaggerated performances, audiences were shocked by Louise's subtlety and carefully constructed nuances. One reviewer even accused her of quote-unquote doing nothing on the screen. Contrary to this opinion, you can see for yourself that Louise was, as Dana Delaney put it years later, actually doing everything. Her performance was so carefully nuanced that you have to pay attention to catch all the intricacies that she adds to Lulu. While years later, Louise would humbly agree that she was no actress and only played herself, it is obvious that she was selling her truly remarkable performance short. Louise and Pabst followed up Pandora's Box with another equally remarkable film, Diary of a Lost Girl, in which she plays Thymian, the young daughter of a wealthy pharmacist that is raped and impregnated by her father's lecherous partner, sent to an abusive girls' reformatory, and escapes into a life of prostitution before being redeemed by her good deeds and kindness showed to her by her later husband's uncle. It's another complicated, amazing performance. Louise followed it up with one last European film, the French Prix de Beauté, which she was released in 1930 and written by Pabst, but directed by Augusto Giannina. In this film, which was initially made as a silent one, Louise plays Lucienne, a middle-class office girl who enters the Miss Europe contest only to win and find herself torn between her success and her love for her working-class fiancé. Although the film was dubbed into French with another actress providing Louise's voice, it was another flawless Louise performance. Louise returned to America in 1930 to find few job prospects. Her mesmerizing work with Pabst meant virtually nothing to Hollywood studios. Furthermore, Louise found herself blackballed. First, she refused to return to Paramount to record vocals for her character in the Canary Murder Case when it was re-edited as a talkie. Even though Paramount offered her another contract and more money, she refused, still hurt by their mistreatment of her the years before. She also was offered and then refused the Jean Harlow role in The Public Enemy opposite Jimmy Cagney. She managed to secure 2 small parts in 2 1931 A pictures at major studios, though. First, she played Thelma Temple, a star put through a publicity stunt in the beginning of It Pays to Advertise. Second, she appeared as a hilarious mistress of Frank Fay in God's Gift to Women, in which she battles Joan Blondell and Yola d'Avril for his affections. These ladies, and co-stars Laura LaPlante and Margaret Livingston, completely stole the film from Fay and are frankly the best parts of the movie. Louise also was given a job by Roscoe Arbuckle to appear in his comedy short Wendy Wiley Goes Hollywood. Finding no other opportunities, Louise left Hollywood in 1931 and returned to the world of dance for a few years, touring the country as a ballroom dancer with Deering Davis, a man she was briefly married to. After their act and marriage broke up, she toured with the actor Dario. In 1936, she made a brief return to Hollywood, starring with Buck Jones in the western Empty Saddles and with John Wayne in the 1938 western Overland Stage Raiders. These two westerns would prove to be Louise's only starring roles in the Talkies and were both B-movies at Poverty Row Studios. Despite this, Louise gave very memorable performances in both of them, and I recommend checking them out. After filming Overland, Louise had enough of Hollywood and finally left for good. After continuing to tour as a ballroom dancer for a few more years with Barry O'Shea and briefly operating a dance studio with him in Los Angeles, Louise swallowed her pride and returned home to Wichita in the early 1940s. When her dance studio there went under, Louise moved back to New York. Finding no other options, she tragically slipped into a world of alcoholism and being a call girl at an escort service. But Louise's luck would change again suddenly in 1955. She was introduced to George Eastman House film curator James Card, who had been looking for her since a resurgence of her two films with Pabst had been occurring in the film history community. French film historian Henri Langlois had even said in 1955, quote, "There is no Dietrich, there is no Garbo, there is only Louise Brooks," end quote. With Card's help, Louise got sober and soon moved to Rochester, where she could be near the Eastman House to watch films and write essays of history, film criticism, and of course, the amazing autobiographical stories of her life and career. She became a sought-after film historian and on occasion gave interviews, including one to John Coble and Kevin Brownlow for their Hollywood documentary on the history of silent film, and also one to Richard Leacock for Lulu in Berlin, in which she discusses her work with Pabst. In all these interviews, Louise reveals her intelligence, her humor, her warmth, and her humility. I highly recommend checking them out on YouTube. Louise would spend the rest of her life comfortably writing and talking about her film experiences and film history. She passed away in Rochester at the age of 78 in 1985. Louise herself provided the answers to why her stardom faltered in the talkies. She was blackballed by Paramount after she refused to give in to their demands without better pay, which led to her refusing to give into their later demands to reshoot the Canary murder case. The only work available for her was B-movie westerns, which she put off appearing in until 1936, but despite her hellish final years in Hollywood and later despair, Louise, as I mentioned, completely turned her life around and became one of the most famous actresses of the silent era all over again. In addition, she became a much sought-after film historian and interviewee. If you watch any of her interviews or read her book, you can understand why. In addition to her candor and her humility, Louise is refreshingly totally honest about everything that she experienced and did. She tells the good, the bad, and always owns the mistakes that she made. If she had made no other film besides Pandora's Box, she would still be considered one of the greatest actresses of all time. I cannot recommend watching Pandora's Box, Diary of a Lost Girl, Beggars of Life, Prix de Beauté, and frankly, all of her films enough. Even in the B-westerns, she still truly shines. Years later, Roger Ebert summed up her acting. Quote, "I watched Louise Brooks effortlessly steal every scene she was in. The others were there in front of the camera. She seemed actually in the scene. Her job as the actress wasn't to lead us to a proper reaction. It was to observe its reality." End quote. What a talent. What a legend. I must thank Louise herself again for her wonderful essays, included in the book Lulu in Hollywood. I must also thank the wonderful folks at the Louise Brooks Society that provided countless amounts of information on their fabulous website. Check them out at pandorasbox.com. Please like this video and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I cover the silent talkie career of Mae Busch. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week.